the hell are you doing out here?
Do you ever wonder what's out there?
What?
It's the Atlas, man. It's calling me. It needs me. It needs me to blow up red crystals and to blow up blue rocks and to blow up these weird little cactusy things and name them after butts and stuff.
Why?
I don't know, man, but it's really, really important. The Atlas was pretty clear on that.
That sounds like a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah. It kind of does. No Man's Sky. Let's talk about that. Hey there, Jellyheads. Welcome to a special episode of Last Coin at the Arcade. We're here to review No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky.
So you've been playing No Man's Sky lately, Lucas.
Yeah, it came out this week, first on PS4 and then later on PC. You may have known it happened because millions of nerds cried out in anguish. There was a disturbance
In anguish? What happened?
It's a mess.
It's a mess?
just
Or
such a
are you
mess.
just talking about like the PS4? Is that
No,
a
the
mess too?
PC one just doesn't work. Like, it sort of works for some people, but as a whole, it's probably the buggiest release since Arkham Asylum came out. About a year ago.
Arkham Asylum had a problem?
Yeah, it's just a case where the games were written with the PS4 in mind, and they work fine on the console, but the PC ports were just hastily done.
Did you think they hadn't planned on making a Steam release when they first started?
No, I think the problem is that they weren't done with the last build until literally hours before the game came out. I heard that NVIDIA didn't even have their version to fine-tune drivers until like after it released.
Okay, so they were just like, we're doing consoles.
Yeah,
And
I think
everybody was like, why not you do the PC?
I think it's going to get better and fast. So I don't even think it's really worth talking about the technical issues on PC other than noting that they're there, because they're either going to get fixed quickly and it's not going to be an issue anymore, or it'll be an ongoing thing, and then everyone will just know, like, don't get that version of the game. For me, the only way they've really presented themselves is I get these CPU slowdowns where like the whole game simulation crawls and I'm still getting 30 frames a second or whatever, but I'm watching things happen at a fraction of the pace they're supposed to happen in the real game, which is annoying to work with, but it's not game breaking.
That's different than like lag.
Right, I think it's like a CPU bottleneck as opposed to a GPU bottleneck. It's not having problems drawing frames, it's actually just having problems calculating all the things that are supposed to be going on at the same time.
Yeah, I think looking at videos like Besiege, that you heard of that game? Where
Yep.
people are like, this thing's too complicated, I have to run the game at like half speed in order for it to not destroy the game. Is it like that kind of situation except it's doing automatically?
Yeah, that's basically what's going on. There's a lot of dirty little tricks that are used to optimize most games that can't be used for No Man's Sky because all the environments are procedurally generated, so it's really hard to occlude certain areas and for the game engine to know what you're looking at, what you could look at right now. Usually game assets are unloaded when there are a few rooms behind you, but this is all open and it's all, made with algorithms so they can't tell if a cave is something that you're about to see. Even the game is always rendering these caves that are under you even if they're hundreds of meters deep and there's no chance you're about to look at them.
You're not getting like a Spore vibe from this, are you? You don't think this is going to be what we were talking about on the podcast, where it could be?
It's funny. The game. It feels somewhat Spore-like, right? And not in a bad way though. Like, it's just the art style and the way things come together, and the way the randomly generated creatures especially are put together. When you're playing the game, you're like, man, this is like what the end of Spore could have been. But it's Spore in a good sense. It's what people wanted the end of Spore to be. At least in some ways. The game's not perfect. It's got some issues. And they're not game breaking. It's still fun to play, but there's some design decisions that really just baffle me.
Like what?
it's a game that's all about exploration, and the game is constantly limiting your ability to explore. You have to fuel your spaceship, and not just with one thing. You have 3 different drives in your spaceship that all require 3 different kinds of fuel.
Yeah.
So you have launch thrusters that need plutonium. You have a pulse drive from moving from planet to planet that requires this fictional element called thamium. And then you have the warp drive, which requires these warp cells, which are pretty expensive to make. And the warp cells work the best out of all of these. They're kind of limiting your ability to jump through the galaxy. But the launch thrusters in particular are just super annoying, because every time you land your ship and take off, it costs 50 plutonium to do it. And if you run out of plutonium, you're just marooned, and you have to just go find plutonium before you can take off again.
Is that
It's not
arduous?
It's not hard, but it puts a design constraint on everything. The game needs to generate the planets in such a way that there's plutonium within walking distance of literally anywhere you could land anywhere. And I just don't understand why they would choose to do that instead of just making landing and taking off free. In a game that's all about exploration and freedom,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense.
It's like it's not
It exists for this, like,
Minecraft. It's
right. There's this little tutorial at the beginning of the game where it's telling you, oh, you need to collect fuel and resources to repair your ship. And it makes sense in that tutorial sense, like, oh, I gotta fuel up my ship, but then you're refueling so often. It's really weird. It's like after the first 20 minutes of the game, it should never matter, but if it happens to, it's really, really annoying. For me, you can stockpile enough that you're not going to run out, but you always have to be watching it. You always have to be concerned with, I got enough plutonium? Okay, I guess I'll set down here. Once you have some money, you can always buy some at a space station. There's a bunch of different ways to get it, but it's strange. The thamium that you use for your pulse drive, it almost seems like they wanted it to be a non-issue, because if you stop literally anywhere in space, there'll be asteroids near you that you can shoot, and they'll give you thamium.
okay.
But it's like, if you're going to make it so trivial to get this, why is it even a resource? So of the 3 fuels, the only one that actually makes sense to me are the other warp cells, which are actually kind of fun to find the rare resources you need to make them and then put them together.
So what are the 3 drives?
Yeah, so the landing thrusters let you take off and land on a planet's surface. The pulse drive lets you move between planets in a system. And then the warp drive is from jumping from system to system of nearby stars.
Okay.
Yeah.
How close to the planets? I was watching some videos, and one of them, the guy's coming out on approach on a planet, and they were like all really close to each other.
Yeah, they're all just kind of planets hanging in space. They're far enough away that if you don't use the pulse drive, it would take you a couple hours to move between them, but they're not any sort of realistic distance. Also, the systems are set up so the planets don't move in relation to each other. They're all just kind of hanging there in space, and the sun actually spins around the whole system.
What?
It's the same way that there's another game that does this. I think Space Engineers handles their solar system. So you have a day-night cycle on the planets because the sun is spinning around the planets, and from the point of view of the planets, it seems like a perfectly normal day-night cycle. But yeah, all the systems are geocentric with this little cloud of planets just hanging in space, and then the
does that feel like a bit of a disappointment?
No, it doesn't bother me at all.
Really?
I think it's great. Like
part of me feels like I would want to arrive there and be like, all right, what's this solar system? I want to explore this solar system, but instead you get there and here's a clump of planets.
So a game that's going to pop up a lot that's really similar, that I'm going to draw a lot of comparisons to, is Elite Dangerous. And Elite Dangerous does do that, where every solar system, everything's in orbit, and all those orbits are simulated, and you'll hop into a system, you'll be like, oh, there's like 4 planets, I can see the orbits here, and there's like a moon over here. And it's neat for a simulation aspect, but it takes like 20 minutes, like every time you jump into a system, to like move through the system and then like slow down from like your super fast pace to like slowly throttle back to get to the point where you can actually land on a planet.
take the case where like I'd get rid of that time aspect and just be like, I'm gonna warp to that spot on my map. I'm like, I'll just click here.
Yeah,
and that's what
sure.
I'll like, boom,
You
and
could-
then I'm like there, or it does a warp thing where it takes like 5 minutes, but you're
You could do a realistic simulation of the planets and the orbits without making the travel time prohibitive. But I think the reason that No Man's Sky chose to set up its systems like that is so you get these really beautiful vistas where you're like on a planet looking out at the horizon and you see 3 more planets like just hanging there in space above you.
So there's more Star Wars kind of a landscape. You get this.
Yeah, I like it's not even Star Wars, but like the pulp sci-fi of the 70s.
Sci-fi, yeah.
like
those sci-fi posters.
a lot of the design decisions of the game artistically are meant to emulate that, and I think they do a very good job.
It is very colorful.
Yeah, and the colors work great. Like every planet has a really, really powerful color palette with like heavy contrast between the land and the sky, and then night will fall and you'll get like a whole different color. Like it's almost unrecognizable. It doesn't just like darken everything, but like there's like luminescent plant life. Like every planet you're on has a totally different character at night than it does during the day. So it's like there's no gas giants in No Man's Sky. Every planet is terrestrial, rocky. There's actually not.
Does that feel
like, so they advertise
could it get
150 quadrillion planets? It's kind of bullshit, right? Like that would be like saying Minecraft has infinite worlds, right? Where it's like it's really like Minecraft is really you've seen one, you've seen them all. Because the gameplay constraints on Minecraft force you to make the same world every time, because you need trees to build, you need to have you need the water, and it's just the terrain dictates how you play, and so how you play dictates the terrain. And because No Man's Sky is so based around this resource gathering, it's got the same problem where every planet you land on, there's plutonium crystals, and they're everywhere. There's these like plants that you can harvest either platinum or zinc from, and they're on just about every planet you land on. And there's these big towering square crystals of iridium, and they're on every planet. And like that stuff kind of bothers me, especially because when I think of space, I think of these like cool, dusty, barren desert worlds, and they just don't exist in No Man's Sky. Every single planet has like sort of similar bulbous plant life and like sort of similar, like some have grass and some don't have grass, and that's like the difference between like the lush planets and the not so
what
lush
I'm looking at
planets.
is like some they don't really have forests. It's just like these plains with a tree thing here or there.
Some of them do have forests, but they're like 20-foot tall trees that are sort of just copy pasted.
Yeah.
And they don't really show up in the low level of detail. They only pop up when you get closer to them. The problem is not so much that it's generating a similar looking plant life on every planet. That wouldn't be an issue. It's that the plant life is so unconvincing because there's so few species. There's so little density in what it can handle that it just never reads as realistic. It's just like the No Man's Sky planet that just has like these like speckled trees. It's like someone just spray painted trees onto like this otherwise deserty world. Sometimes you'd be flying into a planet, you'd be like, oh, this place looks awesome, and then like the level of detail will update and all these crappy little stupid round trees will pop in and you're like, ah, crap. I thought this was
So they didn't put a lot of thought into the generation of like plant life.
I think they
is the fauna more?
I don't want to say they didn't put thought into it. I think it's just you need to be able to collect carbon, so there has to be these plants on every planet. Or what if you run out of carbon, and then you wouldn't be able to, because you have your freaking mining laser that collects resources runs on carbon. So
it sounds like the resource thing is kind of getting in the way.
I am
getting in the way of what they advertised this game was going to be.
Yes, like it became a really grindy game where you're always looking to collect. You always need to have in the back of your head, do I have the right resources to move on? Like, oh, I'm using my mining laser, I can refuel this, right? Oh, I'm taking off, I can put gas back in. And it's just a bummer because the game seems like it should be all about freedom. And If this game were a beta, I would be super duper optimistic. But it's so late in design now, I'm not sure if they can make sweeping changes like that and say, even give you a mode to play where it's like, okay, there's a sandbox mode where you don't need fuel like that. I don't know if it would work. I don't know if it'd be more fun, but I'd like to try it, and I don't know if that's coming. So that does disappoint me a bit.
Like, I heard there's terrestrial planets that aren't livable. Like, there's these barren worlds. Like, people are going like, we're told, and some people have reported being on them, but I've never seen them.
I think part of the problem is that early in the game, all the planets are designed to be easier to survive on. So unless you start progressing really deep, you never start to see the kind of dangerous, barren worlds that people want to experience.
The difficulty, if it had just, like, you go there and you only able to survive on these, like, lush worlds at first, but then you kind of, there's cool things to do by going to these more dangerous, barren worlds. So, like, you can work your way up.
Yeah.
Build up instead of just like you need these specific resources all the time for everything.
Yeah, and I think there is some of that. I think when you get deeper in the game and you have like a lot of money, so buying the resources you need is kind of a non-issue, then it does get more interesting. It's just it's a shame that you have to play that long to get to that point. The interactions with the AI are really, really kind of lacking.
Like the alien AI or
yeah.
the creatures themselves?
Well, so the creatures are fine. Like they're little weird looking things, and maybe they all look a little bit too similar. Like all the quadrupeds all kind of look the same. All the bipeds all kind of look the same. But it's not a huge deal though, and they're varied enough that you can be like, oh look, a little weird like cat rabbit thing, and like it's kind of neat sometimes. But it's the interactions with like the intelligent aliens. There's 3 different sentient races that you can trade with, and first of all, there's zero difference between the 3 different races other than how they look. Whether they're Korvax, which are these robot guys, or there's the Gek, which are these amphibians with beaks that are all about trading. You get text prompts when you talk with them, and there are kind of neat things in the text prompts that make you go like, oh, like they do flesh out the world in a way if you're willing to use your imagination.
Yeah, if you found like alien artifacts, you can gain words that you can understand
and
things more.
For all 3 of the alien languages, you can learn their words, which are one of the cooler collectibles in the game. It doesn't feel forced at all when you get those words. It's not like mining resources because you have to. You're just like, oh man, like I know the Gek word for fish.
Yeah, that's kind of more interesting to me. Like.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I probably just tapped this.
Oh, well.
But, would be more interesting for me is, like, discovering these lost alien civilizations and, like, what is they have that can inform me to, like, do more cool things in the game instead of just, like, I have to get these yellow rocks.
So the problem with trading is that you have these text prompts, and the text prompts are super repetitive. I've probably only seen 50 between the time I've played and watching other people stream the game, and I've already seen repeats like multiple times where it's like the same situation popping up and up again. Like it seems like there's only a couple hundred different interactions that can possibly happen, and you run into them at a rate where you're going to see all of them like really quickly.
I was afraid of that.
And since they're all just text too, it's like, come on guys, you could have had like thousands of these in here. Like just
had a team.
I mean, this is the problem with having a small team. Like a larger game, they would have had some guy that was just cranking these out all day for weeks until there were tons of them. But it's not there.
Do you think they'll be working on this game?
The bones
for
of a
while to just keep adding things in and make it more varied and.
It depends. I mean, like it depends how long it's profitable for them to do that. It's gonna suck if sales just drop off a cliff, and then because the game's getting a fair amount of bad press. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people are making it out to be, unless you have technical
on
issues.
Steam, the PC one's 50-50.
Yeah,
I think PS4's got to be higher than that.
Well, yeah, because like I understand the PC problems. If like you install the game and you literally can't play it, then like what are you gonna do? You got to return it, and hopefully they fix that soon. But I could definitely see with the way the gameplay works, if people get bored of it after, a few, 10 or 20 hours of play, it might be kind of a flash in the pan thing where next month nobody's buying this game, and if that happens, I can't see them continuing to put manpower into trying to make it better, which would be a real shame because it's so close to being great. The moments that are good are so good. When you crest a hill and you just look out onto these alien vistas and you know that no one's ever seen that before, it's awesome. Like,
do you think that perhaps like maybe this could be a good starting point for future games like this? They laid the bedrock. They this is what it could be, and other people are going like, well, this is how it could be better. We can make it better.
Yes and no, because the star of the game is their terrain generation algorithm, and that algorithm is very specific to just this game. It's not like someone else who's going to see this and be like, oh, I want to do that, and then follow in their footsteps. It's so complex to build the bones of a game like this that it's not like no one's had the idea. It's the execution that's really difficult. And they've done a really great job with that algorithm here. I wish the terrain generation itself was more front and center and less the sort of funhouse rides they put in the terrain to try to keep it interesting, because that stuff ends up feeling the same almost instantly as opposed to the infinite variation you get from the actual generation itself. I like the game, and I'm having fun playing it, and I'm hoping that it'll continue to be fun for a while. I've probably put about 10 hours into it so far. And despite the technical hiccups, and despite some of the weird design decisions that really come forward early in the game, once you get into a rhythm, it feels really good. The kind of collectibles like the language and the upgrades to your ship and your tools, they are a lot more interesting than the mindlessly mining resources when you find cool new tech. Well, especially switching out your starship, because there's all these randomly generated starships. Some of them look really cool. Some of them look just like Boba Fett's Slave One.
Really?
You'll see that fly, like not exactly like it, but you'll see something fly into a station that'll remind you of it. And you're like, oh, I want that Boba Fett ship, and then you'll like talk to the captain, and he'll want to sell it for like $2 million, and that's like 10 times as much as what you have. And you'll be like, oh.
I'll never see that again.
One time. Yeah, exactly. Right. But that stuff's neat, and I really like that aspect of the game. I hope that they can patch it and make it better. They've already done stuff like increase player inventory size. I think they need to do it again. Like
it's pretty unorganized too.
Yeah, the inventory is tough to deal with, and the PC interface is terrible. It's definitely designed for a controller.
Could you play it with like the Xbox controller?
Yeah, if you play on a PC, I would just plug in a controller because it doesn't make sense on a mouse and keyboard. It's clearly designed to be used with a controller, and it feels a lot better when you do that. Cool. The spaceship flying especially. Overall, though, I think they've sort of managed to capture the best parts of Elite and Starbound and kind of roll them into one thing. And even though it's rough around the edges, I love the idea, and I think it's really, really cool to play around with. It is a sandbox, you know. It's shallow, but it's wide, and it's a lot of fun.
Would you recommend it?
If you can get it on sale, it's not.
Yeah, so you think I should wait till like maybe like the winter sale?
Yeah, exactly. 6
like
months
this
from now.
Black Friday sale, like.
Yeah. When you can pick this game up for $20 or $30, like I think you feel really good at it, and I think it should have been released at that price point. It's an indie game made by a small studio that doesn't have like all the bells and whistles. Releasing at $60 was just a marketing mess. And so when you can get it at that lower price point that it should have been at originally, it's a great pickup, but I can't recommend it at full retail, especially in the state it's in right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sure a month from now, when our podcast starts up again, we will be talking about where the game's at then, and giving an update for anybody who's still interested. For anybody interested in our podcast, check us out. It's Last Coin at the Arcade. We're on the podcast app Stitcher and iTunes.
Just look it up, Last Coin at the Arcade. Should be easy to find. We also have more podcasts at psychojellyfish.com. It's our umbrella group. You can find more. We got a great movie review show that's still going on right now while Last Coin is on hiatus because of Kevin.
Yep. Last Coin is in its 5th season right now. If you want to hear more of me, listen to season 5. I don't know. Are we going to call it season 6 when we come back after?
We usually do it around New Year's. When like New Year's hits, it's like that's the new season.
Fair enough.
Even when we did the first season, it's shorter because it was like we started it like in August and it hit. And it was like we're just gonna make this the start point. So it's Well, Jellyheads, thanks for watching this episode of Last Coin at the Arcade. We hope you enjoyed our discussion of
No Man's Sky.
Keep it psycho.